On this episode of ResiWeek, we talk invisible speakers and big soundbars, CEDIA restarts in-person education, and Teams add some new features. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is ResiWeek, episode 233, Disjointed Connections.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by Middle Atlantic. What great systems are built on.
Hey, welcome to this week's episode of ResiWeek, your weekly roundup of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matt D. Scott for AVNation.tv, and this week I'm pleased to be joined by two of my very good friends. First, we have Heather Sidorowicz. She is the president of Southtown AV. How you doing, sis?
Hello, friends. How's it going?
It's going great. Then we have Ken Eagle. He is the Senior Global Director of Training at Athlona. How are you, sir?
I am awesome. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you both for joining us today. We are going to kick it off with a story that comes to us from Residential Tech Today and Daryl Wilkinson, which, first of all, it's great to see Daryl writing again. It's been a little bit since he's been writing, and it's great to see him back. So Daryl, thank you, and we're happy to see you back writing. Heard but not seen, these invisible architectural speakers offer beautiful sounds without ugly sights. If you have been in this industry for more than a minute, you have definitely had that argument, or shall we say conversation, with a interior designer or a spouse or someone involved who tells you that no, you can't put that big black box above a fireplace or on that feature wall, and you definitely can't put speakers on the floor, on a shelf, in the wall, on the wall. Somehow, some way, someone has told you you cannot put a speaker where you want it. So Heather, let me start off with you. Invisible speakers have been around for a while. They kind of made their debut, if you will, kind of in the, I want to say, early 90s. And they were real hot for a while, then they simmered, now they're back. And I see lots of designers on Instagram touting this invisible sound and everything else. And I don't see integrators selling them very often, including myself, I pitched them. I've never once sold one.
I sold one, but ironically, that was back in the early 2000s, and that client eventually left and went with another AV firm, and lo and behold, that AV firm doesn't exist anymore, and the house was sold. So we were back today to look at the entire system, and yeah, it's just the concept is great, but I mean, you can make speakers virtually invisible because by putting them in the ceiling, because your eyes don't float up when you walk into a room. In-wall speakers always make me cringe when you walk in, because you can see them immediately. They stick out like a sore thumb. They're right at your eye level or right above your eye level, so you see them. In-ceiling speakers you have to look for. So even this house that we had done so many years ago, I find myself walking around the house, looking up, trying to find where the in-ceiling speakers were. So yeah, I guess in a really high-end home, perhaps if you're not looking at, what happens when the speaker breaks or if there's an issue, then maybe, but no, not in my 18, 19 years. That was the only one we ever did.
That's not necessarily a ringing endorsement, but I don't disagree, because that has been kind of our approach too, is every time we pitch it, they go, oh, that sounds fantastic. We'll never see them. I'm like, no, it'll be just like drywall, and you'll hear it coming from that sort of location, depending on which brand you use, but the disbursement's really wide. It's great for background music, etc. And then they usually have the question, well, what happens if it needs to be fixed? And then we have to go down the road of, yeah, we're going to cut your wall open. Ken, when you see this, when you think about this side of that conversation, the construction aspect, is this something where you can overlook all of those things because they are just as good now, or occasionally even better than a traditional in-wall? Are you giving up that presence and that power for aesthetics?
Well, so I have a problem with it because I like big audio. I'm that guy who cranks the subwoofer way up and shakes the walls, and I like to hear everything happening. I love the bass loud. So for me, from an audio standpoint, it's difficult to sell this product because I'm not sure it performs the way I want to hear the audio. But from an aesthetic standpoint, it's great. I can tell you my wife would love it in a second, not to see the speaker anywhere. And also maybe not to have it quite as loud as I like to jam it. So
don't tell her about these.
Right, exactly. But the other thought I have on this is the mind frame I feel is of the consumer is a little different also today, because in the last, I don't know, let's say 5 years, we've got accustomed to sticking little things around the house in the form of a little voice-enabled audio box, and we'll say whatever the keyword is, play my playlist or whatever, right? Whoever your brand is, Google, Alexa, something, and you play something. So people are used to seeing something now that's not necessarily hidden and interacting with it. So I think it's maybe a little bit tougher sell unless you're in a pure aesthetic environment where you really want to see nothing. And today that is getting big. I mean, you've got a lot of very clean line, uncluttered designs and houses. And so there's definitely a place for it, but I mean, it's a tough sell. I think I agree with you on what you said earlier. It's a tough one to get to sell.
Hey, thanks for watching the first segment of this week's episode. To catch the entire show, please click the link below or visit avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv.